In our latest GB News People's poll, we've asked people to give their verdict on both Boris Johnson and the Metropolitan Police following a controversial week for both.
Well, regarding the former Prime Minister, 48% thought that the investigation into his alleged misleading of Parliament was fair, while only 11% thought the inquiry was unfair.
The poll also showed that 45% of the public have got a negative view of the Metropolitan Police following the release of the Casey report, just 10% having a positive view.
Well, joining us now is the former Special Advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley. Good morning to you, Charlie.
Morning.
Thank you for joining us. Let's start with this Privileges Committee investigation into Boris Johnson. Obviously, it's been in the headlines this week. 11%, only 11%, say the investigation has been unfair. What do you make of those results?
Yes, and I don't know if anybody had the 3.5 hours to 4 hours to spare, but I certainly did the other day, and I watched it in full. And I think for all the talk about the committee might be biased, some of the things that some of the members had said previously, I actually think it was a fair hearing. I think it was right that some of the questions that they asked were asked directly to former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. And I think it showed, in order to restore trust in politics, Parliament and MPs doing the job that they're exercised to do. So it was fascinating viewing, but I think the way in which it was conducted reflects why I think almost 50% of people thought that it was fair. Only 11%, as you say, thought that it wasn't fair, and I suspect around about the other 40% don't care.
Yeah, well, yes, I mean, it's like don't know or don't care, isn't it? I mean, it's right, though, isn't it? I mean, whether people back Boris Johnson or not, it's absolutely right that people are held to account.
Exactly so, and I think, look, there's no doubt about, as he's admitted himself, that he misled Parliament. The question that the committee were trying to ask is obviously whether it was intentional or reckless. But I think what was most astonishing, actually, about the hearing is that when the rules were being put together, the guidance that was being issued, Boris Johnson's defence seemed to be that he thought that it was OK, and as part of a workplace setting, that it was OK to raise a glass to somebody that might be leaving. Now, I don't think that there would be any other organisation across the country during that time that thought having any kind of social gathering or leaving drinks would have been part of a normal work day-to-day practice.
However, though, there are very few other people and companies and all the rest of it who actually still have people in the office doing that. They were in a pretty unique situation anyway, weren't they?
They would have been, but no different to people that were on the front line of the NHS or people that were still maintaining other public services, whether it is the police, which I'm sure we'll come on to, or whether it's, as you say, the NHS or any other fire rescue service. I think anyone else that was able and should have still been at work still would not have been breaching the rules in the way in which it seemed to be in number 10.
Let's talk about the police then, as you mentioned. I don't know quite how to read this. The headline is, from the poll, if you like, 45% of the public have a negative view of the Metropolitan Police. But actually, if you look at it, 10% have got a positive view, 24% a neutral view. So that's 35%... in that sense, not being negative about them. It's still not a good figure, but it's perhaps not as stark as it initially looks.
I think that's absolutely right, actually. And I think one of the things that I think has come out on the back of the Casey review and all of the problems that we've heard and the stories that you've heard that have begrudged the Metropolitan Police, things like the Wayne Couzens and Sarah Everard case, David Carrick. These are awful, awful crimes that have really brought the spotlight, or shone the spotlight onto the Metropolitan Police. But I think there is amongst the public a feeling that we still want to support the police. You know, we police by consent in this country. And there are many officers that I've been hearing on the back of that Casey report, many other interviews, who say that they are ashamed and scared to tell people what they do, to say that they're a police officer. Now, that is terrible. You know, these are people that put on that uniform, they go out day to day to put their lives on the line to protect us as a public. They do a fantastic job, by and large, and it's always, it seems to me, I hope, a minority of people that bring organisations into disrepute, but it seems that there have just been one too many cases within the Met, in particular, that really have worried people and, as I say, rocked that confidence and trust in the police.
But the Metropolitan Police and Sir Mark Rowley and London Mayor Steve Khan, they've got a long way to go, haven't they, to reinstate that trust from people and from Londoners.
They absolutely do, and it's about making sure that, look, they focus on tackling crime, that they're protecting communities, in the way in which communities really want them to. It's about widening and broadening the recruitment, so making sure that they have a more diverse police service, to make sure that they are representing communities that they serve, and making sure that when, as I say, the Casey report was very clear that there was misogyny, sexism, racism, homophobia in the Metropolitan Police Service, so that you can have people within that service to, as I say, stamp out and what they've been accused of, and make sure that, as I say, it's a police service that represents all of us and keeps us all safe.
Here's an interesting one, and I do think this is absolutely fascinating in a way, the difference between the main political parties, because there's everything to play for, of course, with the next election, and we're also showing a 21-point lead for Labour. 27% of people say there's a great difference between Labour and the Conservatives. 25% say some difference. 23%, so all pretty equal figures, say no difference between the parties. Now, that to me suggests, actually, there's not a lot of clear blue water.
No, and so that's why I think it might be that actually what people cast their vote on when it comes to the election is on the basis of the leader. So who is leading the country and who would make the better Prime Minister? Now, there was another poll, I think, last week, Delta, that said that there was only a 10-point gap between Labour and the Conservatives. That's the closest it's been for some time. So, as you're absolutely right to say, Stephen, it's all to play for. And some of that polling that has, as I say, reduced might be on the back of the small boats deal that Suella announced last week. It might be on the Windsor Framework and the deal with the EU that Rishi announced, and which was voted on earlier this week as well. As you start to see the government deliver on its priorities, the priorities that Rishi Sunak set out at the start of this year, it might just be that the tables are turning and people are saying, actually, this guy's very competent, and is the man that actually we want to entrust to see us through the economic turmoil, to deal with the small boats, to get the backlogs cleared on the NHS, and to get this country going.
Has he got enough time to do that, do you think, Charlie? I mean, we're looking at next year, aren't we, for a general election?
Well, we are, and it might be, actually, that one of the best polls, one of the only indications of the polls will be in May, when we have the local elections, which isn't too far away. So that will be a real sort of telling point to see whether the public have are going to back the Conservatives perhaps locally, and that might be whether they go on to back the Tories nationally in a year's time. But you say it's not that long to go. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we will. Charlie, we're going to catch up with you next hour. Thanks very much.
Thank you.